And good evening, folks. Welcome to First Alert Weather Now for your Monday evening edition. I'm meteorologist Corey Thompson.
And as always, I'm meteorologist Messier.
We rarely expect you to be anybody else, which is good. Yes, it has been a nice start to the week here across eastern Iowa, but of course, what is yet to come over the next several days? That's what we're here to get into the details of, among much else.
Fun fact, it doesn't include rain.
Surprise, surprise, based on recent history for sure. And we will also take a look at a little bit of deeper history across the state of Iowa in your weather rewind. But first, what you need to know as you step outside this evening. The good news is that things will not be changing very much over the course of the evening. So if you have Monday evening plans, things should be in really, really good shape. That carries throughout much of the week as well. I would say there's little to worry about. Now, there is a bit of change coming, though, within the next 24 hours. And meteorologist Messier will get into more detail about that coming up in just a little bit in your First Alert forecast. But as she already previewed, rainfall is not likely across the area. We're keeping things very, very quiet. Right now across the Midwest, not a lot going on. Still some residual showers across the eastern United States from the storm system that evolved from what was Hurricane Helene, but we are watching a cold front moving across the area over the next several hours. It has a little band of clouds with it and a wind shift, more notably, that will bring in some breezier conditions as we head toward, well, the start of tomorrow in particular. So your planner for the rest of this evening does call for very quiet conditions to continue. We are expecting temperatures to fall from the upper 70s and low 80s at about right now to the mid 50s by the time you wake up tomorrow morning. But this evening should be very pleasant. If you have sports or some sort of other activity you're taking place this evening, no worries there whatsoever.
A perfect evening to get out. However, people from around the country and here in Iowa are helping with the recovery efforts after Hurricane Helene. The storm has killed more than 100 people after making landfall last week in the southern U.S.
And this is a look at just some of the damage in North Carolina, where you can see debris scattered everywhere. ABC's Rena Roy reports on the cleanup efforts underway tonight.
Gushing water as a rain-soaked hillside gives way, picking up speed and picking up anything in its way.
My car's gone.
I'm okay. It's okay.
Everything's gone.
Helene bringing wind, heavy rain, and causing flash flooding, leaving a path of widespread destruction across the southeast. Asheville, North Carolina, hit particularly hard.
I don't know if anyone was prepared enough for this.
Interstate 40, a major artery, now partially shut down. You can see a section of the road now gone. Hundreds of other roads also closed, cutting off communities now in need of basic supplies. Water distribution sites are being set up.
We're sharing food and water is now becoming available.
Hundreds of people unaccounted for. Search and rescue teams out in force. The destruction stretching from Florida to Virginia, the storm making landfall in Florida's Big Bend area. The White House now stepping in to help. President Biden planning to visit the region this week.
It's not just a catastrophic storm, it's a historic history-making storm. I've directed my team to provide every available resource as fast as possible.
East of Asheville, ABC station WSOC's chopper showing the damage from above. A lake filled with debris, pieces of wood, mangled metal, and even decks torn from people's homes floating in the water. In Tennessee, the governor touring the damage. This bridge partially collapsed.
It's not like anything I've ever seen before. It's an absolute disaster.
Dozens across the state still unaccounted for, including Steve Cloyd. His Jeep found washed away in the floods.
He started to get concerned about the water level rising. And he did call me, and his exact words were, "This is not good, Cal. I'm calling to tell you I love you."
Experts say human-amplified climate change is causing extreme rainfall events like Helene to become more frequent and intense. In the southeast, extreme precipitation events have increased by about 37% in recent decades. Rena Roy, ABC News, New York.
An Iowa native and his family say they have no choice but to rebuild after Helene destroyed their home in Florida. The family is originally from Council Bluffs. They moved to Newport Richey, Florida, about an hour north of Tampa 3 years ago. Since then, they've said they've never gotten hit with a hurricane quite like this. They say at least 2 inches of water filled their home, causing them to lose everything.
My heart dropped. My wife, she was next to me. Her heart dropped. We were just so scared of what was going to happen. Because we weren't sure if it was going to be, 2 feet of water, 5 feet of water, 10 feet of water.
The family says they're thankful they found a temporary home to stay at until they can get back on their feet. They've reached out to FEMA, but it will be a couple of weeks before they can get any help. They've also set up a GoFundMe to help with their expenses.
Now, your First Alert forecast with meteorologist Hannah Messier.
September has been a very dry month. Cedar Rapids has had no recorded rainfall all the way from September 1st to today, September 30th. And it's been pretty warm too. This is the temperature difference from normal, especially when considering high temperatures. Ever since pretty much September 10th all the way through today, we've had above normal temperatures, except the 22nd when it was seasonal, but it's just been very warm in terms of September and dry too. So your first alert has wind highlighted on it because it's going to be a little bit gusty tonight and into tomorrow, with wind gusts greater than 20 miles per hour possible. So any Halloween decorations you've put out a little early, you might want to make sure those are secure. This is the beautiful sunset we have on our Coralville City Cam. That is just a gorgeous way to end the day. Temperatures are in the 70s and 80s. It's pretty warm. 81 in Cedar Rapids, 82 in Iowa City, and 82 in Coralville, with winds mainly coming out of the south around 5 to 15 miles per hour. Now, the reason why it's going to get a little bit windy tonight is because of a cold front that is situated across the state. Now, notice in front of the cold front, we've got winds coming in from the south, but behind it, we have winds coming in from the northwest. This switch in wind directions is actually going to help bring us some more seasonal air briefly on Tuesday. Overnight tonight, we've got those clear skies. Then the winds really start to switch, coming out of the northwest overnight. Tuesday morning, waking up to the sunshine and winds from the northwest. We're going to be pretty sunny for the entire day on Tuesday. That front's not expecting to spawn anything in terms of rain. And then Tuesday evening and Tuesday night, a couple of clouds possible. Overnight, lows in the 40s and 50s. It's actually close to seasonal for once in the north. 48 in Fayette, 48 in Decorah, and 48 in Manchester. Farther south, though, still in the 50s, 53 in Cedar Rapids, 53 in Washington, with that partly cloudy sky. Highs tomorrow, finally a little bit close to seasonal. 69 in Cedar Rapids, right where we're supposed to be for October 1st. 66 in Decorah, 69 in Washington, partly cloudy, with winds out of the north, 10 to 20. Now it's going to feel like pretty much summer for the next several days, even though Tuesday is going to be seasonal all the way Wednesday into the upcoming weekend. Above normal temperatures are back in the forecast. Paired with that is really dry conditions, not really seeing any chances for rain in the whole 9-day forecast, which is what we see. Dry conditions Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And even though we're going to be seasonal on Tuesday, look at that, back into the low 80s by Thursday. Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the mid to upper 70s. Dry conditions even into the beginning of next week. So looks like the warm and dry weather pattern we saw in September is going to continue into October, Corey.
Sure does.
There's never a lack of activities here in eastern Iowa. That's true now as we head toward the early part of October. That's why we give you every day your forecast for fun. If you're doing some walking the next couple of days, the trails are looking great shape, certainly with the dry weather. Weather cooperates. Cooler on Tuesday, real nice morning walk. By Thursday, we're up to 80 degrees. Watch for some of the sumacs. They're starting to change right now, some of the reds in the leaves. If your fall activity forecast tomorrow includes some leaf watching, 53 in the morning, 64 in the afternoon, and 65 by 6. So no problem at all. Maybe you're heading to an apple orchard or a pumpkin patch as well. The weather will cooperate for the early part of the week. Your pumpkin patch forecast all the way for Tuesday and Wednesday also look good. As we can see, temperatures drop from the highs we saw on Monday down to Wednesday in the mid-70s. The Chocolate Walk and Shop, that's in Marion this Thursday. You can visit stores, discover what's new, savor a sweet treat, a southerly breeze. Temperatures should be mild, but any weather's good to have chocolate, that's for sure. It is the weekend of the Anamosa Pumpkin Fest. That happens on Saturday with a high of 77. Gets underway at 8 o'clock on Saturday in Anamosa. There's a parade, a car show, a 5K, a car smash, a kids zone, equipment rental, and rodeo, and games and much more. Enjoy that as well in Anamosa. And of course, don't forget, biggest Oktoberfest here in eastern Iowa happens in the Amana Colonies. That'll be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They could not have asked for nicer weather. 75 on Friday, 77 Saturday, and 76 on Sunday. Perfect time to enjoy some Oktoberfest celebrations. And that tonight is our look at our forecast for fun.
Yeah, if you want to find the silver lining for all this dry weather we've had, it's really set up perfect conditions for those types of events.
Oktoberfest is always one of the best fall events of the year. I love the one in the Amana colonies. There's just the atmosphere is so festive. People should definitely check it out this year because of how nice the weather will be.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't imagine drawing up a better forecast for that at this point. So that's the good news there. Now, we obviously spend a lot of time forecasting looking forward. I am increasingly old day by day and like to look back. And now this weather rewind actually takes us much further back than normal. Goes all the way back to October 1st, 1875. This week in weather history was when the Iowa Weather Service began taking observations from volunteer observers. This started what became and still is the oldest continuously operating state weather service in the country. Now, it still isn't exactly called the Iowa Weather Service. Now we'll get into where its lineage has led in just a minute. But first, let's talk about what this did. And of course, remember, this is 1875. This is well before the National Weather Service, even before some of the initial tries by what was then called the Signal Corps of the Navy to keep track of some of the weather conditions around the country. So there was a call for volunteer observers put out in August 1875. Those observations officially began at the start of October. Now, initially, there were 6 volunteers. The youngest one was a 14-year-old girl. Now, we still saw those numbers of volunteers go up and down over the coming years after that, just depended on people moving. Of course, there was still westward expansion in the country, and so some people didn't stick around in Iowa necessarily for all that long. But it was established by Dr. Gustavus Heinrichs of the University of Iowa. Maybe you remember that name. We'll get into why in just a second. Here he is, picture of him from back then, a pretty magnificent mustache. He lived in Iowa City from 1862 to 1886. He originally was a professor of modern languages. He could speak several of them, but also taught physics, chemistry. In fact, some of his work in combination with others in the field was eventually what led to the creation of the periodic table of the elements. So yeah, kind of a big deal. He also had a keen interest in meteorology and eventually was the person who coined the term derecho in a published piece of research in 1887 that was based on a storm that took place in Iowa. Of course, we all kind of learned about these in 2020 if you hadn't heard of them before, but this storm in 1877 was what caused him to eventually develop that term to distinguish it from tornadoes, because a lot of those really strong windstorms were initially reported as tornadoes. Now, here's where he did his observations from in Iowa City, a building that doesn't exist anymore, but it was built and he sort of converted his own home into the central office of the Iowa Weather Service. Now, as it stands, it kind of traces its lineage to the state climatologist's office. That's kind of where this eventually led. And of course, many of these functions were eventually taken over by the Weather Bureau and eventually the National Weather Service, but they still work in concert with those state offices too in order to keep those weather records. Now, weather records, crucially important to know where we've been and know where we're going. And so this early establishment of those was really important to sort of help early Iowa agriculture and help all sorts of things back in the day. And of course, those records are still valuable to look back now almost 150 years ago.
Sounds like Gustavus, did I say that right?
Yeah, I think so.
He had quite the influence on meteorology, not just here in Iowa, but it sounds like he put into place some systems that we still use all across the country.
Yeah,
now.
in other fields of science, he also developed an embalming fluid that was used by people in that business. After that, he had an interesting life. He also was apparently kind of a hard guy to work with and eventually kind of got shoved out from the University of Iowa because he butted heads with the president at the time, the president of the college, not of the United States. So interesting story for sure, but certainly a brilliant guy who was very, very meticulous about his weather observations too.
I mean, accuracy is important, but I can't see that it would be easy to argue with the guy who helped make the periodic table of the elements.
Yeah, very much so. That's on a different plane than you or I think. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn for you. I would not be able to come up with something like that. I'm very much in awe of that.
Yeah, no, chemistry really not my thing. Chemistry lab, I still have some anxiety over it. But we're going to focus on the 9-day because that is something that both Corey and I can do. So in the next 9 days, again, not really seeing much in terms of rain, but At least Tuesday, for the first day of October, will actually be seasonal. Let's take a look at what we typically see in October. October's temperatures, they're typically in a little bit cooler. So 10 days usually in October are in the 60s. Only 6 days in October are usually in the 70s. And it's pretty rare to get high temperatures in the 30s and 40s in October, but it can happen. However, as we've seen in our 9-day forecast, we're likely going to be on the warm side of that for this month. Now let's look ahead to Wednesday. We're seeing across eastern Iowa on Wednesday some daylight going to be lost. Now we've been seeing losing daylight ever since the summer solstice, but let's put it into perspective. The summer solstice, we had 15 hours, 14 minutes, and 21 seconds of daylight, but on Wednesday, we'll only have 11 hours and 40 minutes and 10 seconds, which means we'll have lost 3 hours, 40 minutes, and 11 seconds. Now, of course, let's look ahead to Friday for our Friday night lights. Temperatures in the mid-70s on Friday with a partly cloudy sky. Even though it is dry, at least it's good weather for some high school football. Now, of course, headed into Saturday, we have the Amana Colony's Oktoberfest going on. Fantastic forecast for that Friday and into the weekend with temperatures in the upper 70s. Now, we're going to continue to see those dry conditions continue Monday, Tuesday, and into Wednesday with overnight temperatures in the 40s and 50s. We'll just have to take advantage of the fall-like temperatures for tomorrow, Corey.
Yeah, for sure. And there's many more warm days to come. So if you prefer that type of weather, you're going to get it too. Tomorrow should be a nice change of pace, but it will be a little breezy.
That's true. A lot of times cool weather at this time of year does come with some wind.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, we will recap everything that happened tomorrow and another look ahead with your Tuesday edition of First Alert Weather Now. We'll also kind of recap September and finally get those numbers about how warm and how dry it really was. So please come back with us tomorrow night, same time, same place. Until then, have a great night.